Hello everybody, I'm Maxi. Welcome to a new episode. Earlier I saw some people online saying they want a timeline of China's whole history, and I've also noticed that their motherland loves talking about history. So here is this episode. I've tried to make a brief but sort of complete introduction to China's history, what eras we have in the past thousands of years, what they are about, and what is the thing between the mainland, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, things like that. So here I'm going to give you the timeline and teach some Mandarin along the way. And again, I've made an English subtitle for this video. I've put the Chinese characters, the pinyin in it. So if you have any trouble understanding what I'm saying, remember to turn on the subtitle. Okay, the first era, Xia, Shang, Zhou. These three are the earliest recorded dynasties in China's history. And this era is from about 2070 BC to 770 BC. This is the borderly mythological era. A lot of the history is intertwined with mythological stories. And the start of this era is the time when the Chinese culture emerged in today's Henan province. If you go there nowadays, especially to the capital Zhengzhou, you can see a lot of relics and archaeological sites. And this is also the era when the Chinese characters came into being. They first appeared on bones and turtle shells, sometimes for recording things, sometimes for rituals. In general, this era is considered the birth of China, the time when the culture finally evolved from tribes into feudal dynasties. And by the time of the third dynasty, the Zhou dynasty, the feudal system was already mature. And they moved their capital to today's Xi'an, by the way, no longer in Henan. They moved several times, but Xi'an is considered the center of that dynasty. So that's where you need to go if you want to have a trip about this dynasty. So basically, the Zhou dynasty is the peak of the earliest feudal China. And then they also died of the feudal system because the power got diluted over the generations. And at the end, there were all these fragmented little regimes all over the map fighting each other. Okay, after the Zhou dynasty got broken, we came to the second era, the Spring and Autumn and Warring States era, 春秋战国时期. This is from around 770 BC to 221 BC, a little more than 500 years, a lot shorter than the first era. Basically, this era is the aftermath of Zhou dynasty's failure. It's actually divided into two parts. The first part is called Spring and Autumn, 春秋. The second part is called Warring States, 战国. At this point, the Zhou dynasty didn't actually die. It's still there, nominally, but it has no power. It's just one king in the center with no power to control all these feudal lords. And then why this era is divided into two parts is because of how the power shifted. In the first part, the Zhou dynasty still had that little bit power left, so they were still respected, and all these feudal lords were just competing to be the leader below the king without actually killing each other and taking over everything. And then when the Zhou dynasty finally lost that little bit power, that's when we entered the Warring States period. That's the time when all the feudal lords were fiercely fighting each other, killing each other, taking over each other, and trying to take each other's lands. So, what is worth mentioning in this era besides all those chaos? And that is, this is the era when all the mainstream Chinese philosophies came into being. This era was like a sudden spring for all the ideologies and philosophies. The most famous two, Confucianism from Confucius, we call him Kongzi, and then Taoism from Laozi. So you can say this is the era that laid the foundation for China's mindset. But beside that, this era was all about wars and chaos. Every little state trying to fight and take over every other little state. And then finally, someone succeeded. Okay, after the previous chaotic era ended and the land is finally united again, we came to the third era, the Qing dynasty and the Han dynasty. And this era is from 221 BC to 220 AD, a little less than 500 years. So that one little state who finally won amongst all the feudal lords is called Qing. the ruler then created the dynasty of Qin, and he invented the concept of emperor, so he became the first emperor in China's history. Before that, we only had kings. If you have played the video game Sid Meier's Civilization, he is China's leader in the 6th edition. His name is Yin Zheng, very hard to write that surname, but he is more broadly known as Qin Shi Huang, literally means the first emperor of Qin. He played a really important part in China's history because it was him who standardized the measures, the weights, the currency, and the written language, and we kept that tradition ever since. And some of you may know the tourist attraction, the Terracotta Army. That is his doing too. That side is his mausoleum. He laid a lot of foundation, but unfortunately, he was maybe one of the cruelest tyrants in China's history. So as a result, the Qin dynasty only lasted 15 years, and then it became the Han dynasty. It improved the foundation laid by the Qin dynasty and lasted quite long. It was the time when we started systematically build the Silk Road that led to the Roman Empire at the end of the Han dynasty. And Han is also the dynasty that China started to let go of the old feudal way and started to centralize the power. And it went well for some time, but unfortunately, the Han dynasty then died of corruption. So we came into another chaotic era. Okay, the chaotic era after Han dynasty is called 三国两晋南北朝. 3 kingdoms, 2 Jins, southern and northern dynasties. You can judge how chaotic it was just by the name. The first part of this era, the 三国, 3 kingdoms period, is very short, only from 220 to 280, only 60 years, but it may be the most famous era in China's history in literatures and video games. I guess some of you may know the famous novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, 三国演义. It's about this period, but don't trust it. It's just a novel, it's not a real history. It's no more realer than games like Dynasty Warriors. There is another book, Records of the Three Kingdoms, 三国志. That one is the real history. Okay, that is this period, chaotic but legendary. And then after the Three Kingdoms, the Jin dynasty united the land again. And that is from the year 266 to 316, a little bit overlapped with the Three Kingdoms. And as you can see, it didn't last long. It collapsed and the land got broken again. As you can see in the left of this picture, the residue of the Jin dynasty became a local regime and got replaced by one another. And then we need to wait until the year 581, until finally someone united the land again. Okay, after another chaotic era, we came to the era of the Sui dynasty and the Tang dynasty. This is from the year 581 to the year 907. It's a little bit like Qing and Han in the past, where Qing sort of served as a prelogue for the Han dynasty. Here, Sui dynasty is like the prelogue of the Tang dynasty. And the Sui dynasty only lasted 38 years, but again, it laid a lot of foundation for the coming ages. It was Sui dynasty that invented Keju, the state exam system, a little bit like today's 高考, our college entrance exam. But Keju was not for colleges and universities. It was the exam you need to take to become bureaucrats and officers. Before that, all these positions were passed down in families. After that, it started to become based on merits. So that's what the Sui dynasty created, but still it ended quickly, and we came to the Tang dynasty. And then Tang, the juicy part. This dynasty is considered the most open-minded and cosmopolitan dynasty in ancient China. People from all around the world came here to do business, to study, to get married and have kids. In this dynasty, China's culture was heavily influenced by Central Asia, West Asia, and even Europe and Africa, all coming from the Silk Road. If you go to today's Xi'an, which was the capital of the Tang dynasty, you can see a lot of people dressed in traditional costumes there. And I guess some of you may already know this kind of costume is called Hanfu, right? But back then in the Tang dynasty, this name was not completely correct. Some of this costume would be called Hufu back then. Hu means exotic and foreign, because some of the styles are heavily influenced by foreign culture. And besides this, the Tang dynasty improved the Keju system, the exam system from Sui Dynasty. Before, it was only limited to the aristocrats, and the Tang Dynasty made it open to commoners. So again, we had quite some prosperous time during Tang Dynasty, but unfortunately, at the end of the dynasty, something happened. The military powers on the borders got too strong and started to rebel, and they ended the Tang Dynasty. Okay, after the Tang Dynasty, we came to another chaotic era, surprise. And this era is called 5代十国, literally means 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. And that's it. This is the greatest limbo in China's history. It's as chaotic as all the chaotic eras before, but less impressive. So usually people just don't talk about it because there really isn't much to talk about. Okay, after that quick chaotic era, we came to another fantastic era, and this is the Song Dynasty. This was a very advanced dynasty and also a very popular one in pop culture because it was the dynasty when we almost reached a modern commercial society 1,000 years earlier. Song Dynasty invented paper currency, at least for us, and is the dynasty that commercial tax finally surpassed agricultural tax. And it's the dynasty that we see highly designed urban districts. Basically, every aspect of the society was developed rapidly. Tech, literature, music, painting, fashion, new business models, and even recipes. Recreating Song Dynasty recipes has become a fashion in the past decade. And by the way, the capital back then is today's Kaifeng. It's in Henan province again. So if you want a tour about this dynasty, that's the city to go. Don't try to find the Song Dynasty in Beijing, it's not there. Oh, by another way, if you are currently playing the famous game Where Winds Meet, this is the dynasty when the story happened. Anyway, it was a beautiful time and it lasted another few hundred years. Okay, the Mongols conquered China and almost the entire Asia and Europe, and they started the Yuan dynasty. And this was from the year 1271 to 1368. If we try to make it sound nice, I think we can say this was the dynasty when China had its largest territory in history. Anyway, this was the first dynasty that China was not ruled by the Han Chinese. It was ruled by the Mongols. And the Mongols finally moved the capital to Beijing, today's capital. And by the way, the Mongols are now an officially recognized minority group in China. And back then, thanks to the Mongolian Empire, China benefited from the globalization once again. New tech, new crops, new food, new culture, new people, and new ways to see the world. This was the time when that most stereotypical blue and white porcelain was invented, because this was the time when we finally got those blue paints for porcelain from the Islamic world. And this was also the dynasty when Marco Polo supposedly visited China. In general, you can say the Yuan dynasty had a very split mind. On the one hand, they classified different races into different levels, 4 levels. The Han Chinese are at the bottom, and the Mongols are at the top. But on the other hand, they were also self-assimilating into the Han Chinese culture. The whole country was governed in the Han Chinese framework, and they also performed rituals to pay tribute to Confucius. And many of the higher-ranking officials, which were Mongol or other minorities, adopted a Han Chinese name or used a hybrid name. So it seems they were like trying to walk on 2 different directions at the same time, and it didn't work out. The Yuan dynasty lasted less than 100 years, and then it was overthrown by domestic revolution from the Han Chinese people. Okay, after the Yuan dynasty ended, the Han Chinese are back again in the center of the country, and we entered the next era, the Ming dynasty. This was from the year 1368 to 1644. This was the dynasty when they finally built the Forbidden City in Beijing, as we see nowadays, and it was also the dynasty that they built the Great Wall, as we see nowadays. So I think this part is quite funny, that many of the landmarks that people have for the ancient China are actually quite new. It's already the Ming dynasty. Anyway, they built a lot of things, and this was also a dynasty when commerce developed rapidly. We also saw some budding capitalism of that age. But unfortunately, compared to the Song dynasty and the Yuan dynasty, the Ming dynasty was very close-minded and conservative. They didn't want that much to open to the outside world and learn from it. Instead, they spent a lot of resources building inward intelligence agencies. That's some fantastic material for literatures and video games, but it seemed not really good for a country. And because of this and all these problems, the dynasty stayed stable for a while and then deteriorated fast. In the late stage, the parties devoted all their energies into fighting each other instead of solving the problems of the country. And the state machine, the government, were basically dysfunctional. And they spent a lot of money fighting the wars on the borders against the nomads and also back home against the rebellions. And they also spent a lot of money to build the wall. So at the end, the country was hollow, and it was not that hard for the enemy to conquer it from the outside. And who defeated the Ming dynasty? The Manchus did, and they started the Qing dynasty. This part was from the year 1644 to 1912. Once again, China was not ruled by the Han Chinese. The Manchus ruled China. By the way, they are also a officially recognized minority group in today's China, and it was them who created the Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty of China. So what does this dynasty look like? If you have seen some C-dramas, you may sometimes see men have this haircut that they shave all the hair from the front all the way to the middle and only kept the hair from here to here and keep this long braid. That's Qing dynasty. That's the Manchu style. When they defeated the Ming dynasty and started the Qing dynasty, they imposed this style on all the men in this land. Back then, it was you either keep your head or keep your hair. And also, sometimes you would see in the C-dramas that some noble women have these large rectangular accessories over their head. That's also the Manchu style. That's also the Qing dynasty. So in this dynasty, again, it had 2 generations' time of prosperity, or should we say stableness. And because that was also the time when we imported corns and sweet potatoes from America, the continent. So the population exploded once again. And given all these conditions, you would hope the country to do well? No. The Qing dynasty spent a lot of energy in fighting thought crimes to do literacy inquisition. And because of that, the society basically ended up in a stagnated situation. And the Qing dynasty sort of kept that close-minded and conservative attitude of the Ming dynasty. So later on, the later emperors and the ruling class in general basically shut their eyes to the development in Europe and still saw themselves as the most advanced country on earth, the most superior culture that history had ever seen. And then what happened? We got conquered by Europe. And that was the time when the UK took Hong Kong and Portugal took Macau. And finally, in 1912, the Qing dynasty was overthrown by domestic revolution. Okay, after the Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty ended, we came to the next era, Republic of China. The revolution succeeded, people created a new country and started experimenting democracy. This part for the mainland is from 1912 to 1949. This is another chaotic era. The World War II, the invasion from Japan, the fightings amongst the military laws, and ultimately the civil war between the Communist Party and the Nationalist Party. Finally, the Communist Party defeated the Nationalist Party, and the Nationalist Party fled to today's Taiwan and kept their power there. And the Communist Party created the People's Republic of China in the mainland, which is our current era. And the official name that Taiwan is using now is still Republic of China. So basically, you can say the thing between the mainland and Taiwan is a unsolved civil war of China. But that doesn't mean the two sides are still fighting each other. People travel between the two sides to do business, to study all the time. So, after 1949, the current era started. And I guess we all sort of know what happened after that. China rebuilt from the ruins of World War II and became what we know nowadays. And the mainland took back Hong Kong and Macau and made them into special administrative regions to experiment capitalism in them, while the mainland is doing socialism. Of course, there are a lot of stories in this era, just like there are a lot of stories in any era before this, but that is too much for this episode. So that is today's video about China's history, the whole timeline. I hope I have given you a clear introduction. And thank you for watching this far. If you like it, if you like what I'm doing, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm Maxi. I basically talk about Mandarin, but sometimes share some fun facts about China. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.